So if you're following the real estate landscape, you know the pendulum is definitely swinging.
It really is.
You know, those high interest rates have definitely cooled off that feverish market we all remember from a couple of years ago. A lot of major areas are seeing, well, some normalization.
And that normalization is absolutely visible in greater Indianapolis. The data we've been looking at for this deep dive, it confirms a huge shift. We're seeing nine Indianapolis suburbs cross into what analysts are calling buyer's territory.
Sellers are finally starting to feel the pressure.
Exactly.
But the truly fascinating story, and really the whole reason we're doing this deep dive today, is this incredible market split that's happening right inside that same area.
A profound split.
Yeah, our analysis shows there are 5 specific, really elite pockets that aren't just resisting this shift. They're aggressively defying it. They're acting like it's still 2022.
We're calling them the seller strongholds. And based on the November 2025 closing data we have, they are consistently, and I mean consistently, delivering over 102% of the original list price.
So that means bidding wars are still the norm there. The power dynamic, it hasn't shifted one bit.
Not at all.
So our mission today is to unpack all of this. We're going to get into the precise analysis, the cold, hard data from actual transactions, and the tactical playbook that explains why these 5 areas, Fishers, Carmel, Zionsville, Geist, and McCordsville, are basically immune.
We want you to understand the leverage points in this very, very localized market. We'll drill down into what makes them different, look at the staggering numbers, and give some critical advice for anyone even thinking about selling there before, things might change next spring.
Okay, so let's get straight to it. The root of the issue, really. What is the secret sauce? Why are these 5 hyperlocal zones seeing all this competition when the town right next door is cooling off?
What protects them?
Yeah, exactly.
The analysis we reviewed points to 4 key factors, and they really converge perfectly to create this immunity. The first one is structural. It's supply control.
Okay.
What's crucial here is that in these 5 specific geographical zones, there is virtually no land left for any kind of large-scale new construction.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, if you can't build new houses, the supply is naturally capped. You don't get that flood of new listings that can cool a neighborhood down.
Right.
But that's only half the equation, right? What about the demand side? You mentioned these buyers are different.
They are very different. So factor number 2 is buyer resilience. The typical buyer in these strongholds, according to the analysis, is high income and, maybe most importantly, rate resistant.
Rate resistant. What does that actually mean? They're all paying cash.
Not necessarily, though we do see a lot of it. It means they often have a high net worth or they have access to asset-based lending. So, a 7% conventional mortgage rate just doesn't derail their entire plan.
Right, not like it would for a median income buyer.
Exactly. They're just less sensitive to those big macroeconomic shifts. They have the financial horsepower.
So if we look at a couple of these places, like Zionsville or Geist, the other 2 factors you mentioned seem to be all about what they're actually buying.
Absolutely. Factor 3 is the draw of an irreplaceable lifestyle. This isn't just about a nice house. It's about a fixed, limited resource.
Okay, like what?
In Geist, it's all about water access. In Zionsville, it's that protected village charm and, of course, the top-tier school systems. For Carmel, west of Meridian, it's the established estate lots, the ones with deep private acreage.
You can't just build more of those.
Can't replicate them. A new development can't just pop up down the street and offer the same thing.
Let's probe that geographic split for a second, because that's fascinating. You said Carmel west of Meridian. Why there and not the east side?
That's a great question, and it really speaks to how hyperlocal this all is. West of Meridian has a much greater density of older, custom estate-style homes. A lot of them are landlocked with these big, deep lots.
So they're just not making any more of them.
Right. The inventory is inherently constrained. The east side of Meridian, while it's also very desirable, has seen more higher density development over the years. The same logic applies to Fishers south of 126th Street.
The established neighborhoods versus the newer builds?
Exactly.
Yeah.
South of 126 is where you find those classic established neighborhoods. That road becomes this sort of invisible barrier protecting the stronghold. It's not just the town, it's which side of the road you're on.
That is a crucial insight. And all of this leads to the final factor.
It's the natural result of the other 3. Chronic undersupply, limited land, rate-resistant buyers, and an irreplaceable lifestyle. It all adds up to a persistent year-round shortage of homes for sale. So when the broader market softens, these 5 pockets just stay starved for inventory.
Okay, so now let's turn to the data itself. To really get a sense of this intensity, we have to look at the November 2025 Seller Stronghold snapshot.
Right.
This is where we see that secret sauce translating directly into, well, big money and fast sales.
Right, and before we jump into the actual table, let's quickly define these key metrics for you. We're looking at months inventory,
The standard measure.
the standard measure. How long it would take to sell every single house on the market right now if nothing new was listed. A balanced market is usually 5 to 6 months. We are seeing numbers way, way below that.
And the other one is DOM, days on market.
Average DOM, how long a property sits before it goes under contract. And with that context, the numbers are pretty staggering.
So Fisher's south of 126th Street seems to be leading the pack in terms of speed?
It is the clear leader in velocity, for sure. Fisher south of 126 has a month's inventory of just 1.9 months.
Wow.
When supply's that tight, competition just spikes. It drives the average days on market down to a blindingly fast 8 days.
8 days.
And they're closing at 102.4% of list price on average. That's pulling premiums of, $15,000 to $35,000 over asking. It absolutely justifies the name we heard for it, the Frenzy Factory.
The Frenzy Factory. I like that. So if Fisher's is the fastest, where are sellers making the most money?
That would have to be Geist and Fort Harrison. They had the highest average sale-to-list price at 102.6%. But what's really fascinating there is the sheer size of the premium.
How big are we talking?
Sellers are regularly seeing between $40,000 and a jaw-dropping $150,000 over list price.
150,000. Now that small percentage point difference, between Fisher's at 102.4 and Geist at 102.6, it seems tiny, but it implies these are totally different kinds of deals. Why is that?
It's that waterfront leverage. Geist transactions they're higher dollar amounts to begin with. We're closer to the $1 million mark and above. So a small percentage over list translates into a much, much larger dollar premium.
Of course.
Plus, like we said, that market is driven by irreplaceable waterfront access. A buyer looking for a dock is just willing to go to a higher price point than a buyer who just wants a great location in Fishers.
And Zionsville is right up there too, with premiums up to 120,000.
Yeah, Zionsville, the Equestrian Elite as it's called, it maintains its edge with 2.3 months inventory. Days on market is a little longer, at 11 days, but the prestige and those limited large acreage lots, that's what drives those massive premiums.
Yeah, McCordsville rounds out the list.
Right, McCordsville and the Geist Reservoir area. It's a 2.6 months inventory and 14 days on market, so it's the slowest of the 5, but it's still firmly in seller territory. It proves that even as an emerging powerhouse, that access to the reservoir is enough to keep sales at 101.5% of list. The stats are one thing, but the real-world transactions, that's what brings the leverage to life. These are actual closings from November 2025 that show what's fueling these numbers.
Okay, let's start back in Fisher's, in that Frenzy Factory, and see if we can confirm that 8-day average.
Oh, we can. We saw deals that just exemplify buyer desperation. A property on Braveway was listed just under $540,000. It got 7 offers in 4 days and closed at $565,000. All cash.
All cash, wow.
Another great example is on Charleston Lane. That one got 11 offers, closed for $23,000 over list, and get this, the buyer waived the inspection entirely.
That's not just competitive. That's a buyer who's prioritizing getting the house over everything else.
Over their own due diligence. And even when appraisals become a hurdle, these high-income buyers are just absorbing that risk.
How so?
We tracked a closing on Belgrade Drive. It closed for $632,000 on a $599,000 list price. And the transaction details confirmed the buyer had to cover a $15,000 appraisal gap out of pocket.
So they're basically telling the bank, I don't care what you think it's worth, I value it at this price.
That's exactly what they're saying.
Let's move over to that luxury leverage in Carmel, west of Meridian. You said the split there is really intense. What are the deals telling us?
West of Meridian is routinely, seeing between 7 and 12 offers on premium properties. Take a home on Collins Street, listed at $1.225 million. It closed at $1.265 million after a bidding war with 9 separate offers. And another one on Laurelwood, listed at $925,000, closed for $975,000, all cash in just 6 days.
So the contrast is the key. The east side is cooling, but the west side is still commanding these huge cash premiums.
Because of that scarcity of the large established lots, it all comes back to that.
And now Zionsville, the Equestrian Elite, where the premiums were potentially huge.
Zionsville really demonstrates that even at the highest price points, that structural undersupply is king. We saw a property on South 800 East listed for $849,000, close at $890,000. All cash, inspection waived.
A clear capitulation by the buyer.
A total capitulation. But the biggest one we saw was on West 131st Street. Listed at $2.35 million, it escalated to $2.49 million after a really fast 48-hour bidding war.
So even multi-million-dollar properties are getting bidding wars.
When that happens, you know the market is fundamentally tilted toward the seller.
Which brings us to the Waterfront wars in Geist and Fort Harrison. This has to justify that high 102.6% average.
The mantra there is just scarcity. It's driven by less than 2.4 months of waterfront inventory. We have seen buyers who will pay almost anything to get a dock in that view.
Give me an example.
Okay, a house on Teacup Way, listed for $950,000, closed for $1.02 million. Cash. Even more dramatically, one on Geist Valley Court, listed at $2.1 million, closed at $2.28 million. And the notes explicitly cited the private boat dock as a leverage point that drove that $180,000 premium.
And McCordsville is just leveraging that same dynamic on the other side of the reservoir.
Absolutely. A home on Stansbury Boulevard listed at $799,000, closed for $835,000 in 9 days. A lakefront property on Port Drive listed $1.15 million, closed $1.22 million. What this data proves is these 5 specific areas are, for now, immune to the broader market shift.
So if you're a seller right now in one of these 5 pockets, Fishers, Carmel, Zionsville, Geist, or McCordsville, how do you actually do it? How do you execute a sale to make sure you capture one of those massive premiums? What does the seller playbook for 2025 and 2026 look like?
Okay, the first rule is all about your pricing strategy, and this is non-negotiable. You have to be aggressive, but precision is absolutely vital. The analysis strongly recommends pricing within 1% of a hyper-local comparative market analysis, CMA.
Wait, hold on. If the market is this hot, why not push it? Why not test a really high price? That's what everyone was doing back in 2021.
Because the environment has changed. Even these rate-resistant buyers are sophisticated. They will pay a premium in a bidding war, but they're incredibly savvy about relative value.
I see.
The analysis confirms that if you overprice, the property will just sit. And if it sits for, say, 15 days or more, that signals weakness to the buyer pool. And those competitive offers, they just vanish.
So you price it precisely to trigger the bidding war, not to avoid one.
You've got it. That's the key. And beyond price, the marketing has to be tailored to the specific lifestyle that you're selling. Generic photos are not going to get you a $150,000 premium.
That makes sense.
The marketing has to be specialized. For Geist, that means professional drone water shots are mandatory. You have to show the access. For Zionsville, you need lifestyle staging that highlights that equestrian or village feel. For Carmel's high-end homes, virtual twilight tours are critical.
You're selling the dream, not just the square footage.
Exactly. The buyer is paying for the lifestyle.
So when those offers start rolling in, where should a seller focus their negotiating power?
On the things that really matter: price and non-contingency status. The negotiation focus has to be on holding firm on the highest price and discouraging contingencies like inspection and appraisal.
So you give a little to get a lot.
Right. The sources advise sellers to be flexible on the small stuff, minor repairs, closing dates in exchange for securing that highest all-cash offer or the one that's covering the appraisal gap. You don't risk a 6-figure premium over a $2,000 repair.
Which leads us directly to what sounds like the most critical piece of the playbook, the timing. There's a pretty stark warning in the analysis about the near future.
This is, without a doubt, the most pressing takeaway for anyone listening. The playbook strongly recommends listing before March 1st, 2026.
Before March 1st.
The sources are crystal clear on this. The spring 2026 market is expected to bring a flood of new listings across all of these strongholds. They specifically forecast 40 to 60% more competition in Zionsville alone.
So this current window where inventory is under 2.6 months is likely going to widen, and soon.
Precisely. Any seller who waits until that peak spring season, they risk trading their current near monopoly on inventory for a marketplace that is saturated with new options. And that will dramatically dilute the bidding pool and erode those exceptional premiums we've been talking about.
So the time to act is now, during the traditionally slower, low inventory season.
That's where the maximum advantage is.
So to summarize this really remarkable deep dive, we've established there's a profound and very profitable market split happening in greater Indianapolis.
No doubt about it.
While most suburbs are going back to a more balanced market, these 5 strongholds, driven by that chronic undersupply, those rate-resistant buyers, and irreplaceable lifestyle features, They continue to offer sellers an environment where 102% overlist is the norm.
And the stakes for acting on this information are exceptionally high. The analysis suggests that capitalizing on this narrow pre-spring window could mean the difference between getting a good return and leaving an extra $50,000 to $150,000 on the table.
It's a finite window.
It's entirely based on inventory scarcity.
It's such a powerful lesson in hyperlocal real estate dynamics. It proves that those structural factors, the limited land, the top schools, the village charm, can easily trump big macro changes like interest rate.
Which really raises an important final question for you to think about as you process all this data. If scarcity is what allows these sellers to get such massive premiums, and the sources are predicting a 40 to 60% increase in competing inventory starting this spring, will these high-income buyers continue to pay 7 offers over asking when they suddenly have way more options to choose from?
That's a great question.
How much new inventory does it take to finally break the chronic undersupply that has defined these elite markets for so long? Something to mull over as we watch the market heat up towards spring.